The young doctor on this stage was once a homeless boy who slept on bus station benches. And the person he thanked wasn't a millionaire, a politician, or even a family member. It was a librarian who refused to ignore him when everyone else did. 10 years earlier, Ethan had no home, no money, and no hope. What happened next would change his life forever. Rain hammered the streets of Chicago. People rushed past a skinny teenage boy sitting outside a convenience store. His clothes were soaked. His stomach was empty. His eyes were filled with exhaustion. That boy was Ethan. 3 months earlier, he had lost both parents in a tragic accident. After being passed from one relative to another, he eventually ended up alone. That evening, searching for warmth, Ethan walked into a public library. The heat felt wonderful. For the first time all day, he relaxed. A few minutes later, a woman approached him. She wore glasses and carried a stack of books. "Hello," she said gently. Ethan looked nervous. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I work here." She noticed his wet clothes but didn't mention them. Instead, she asked, "What do you like to read?" Nobody had asked him that in a very long time. After a pause, he answered, "Medicine." Sarah smiled. "Medicine?" Ethan nodded. "I used to want to become a doctor." "Used to?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "Look at me." Sarah looked directly into his eyes. Then she said something he would never forget. "Never decide your future based on your current situation." For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak. Nobody had talked to him like that before. Before leaving, Sarah handed him a medical textbook. "Take it." "I can't pay." "It's not for sale." "Why are you helping me?" Sarah smiled. "Because someone once helped me." That night, Ethan opened the book. Inside was a handwritten note, and the words inside would change everything. Hidden inside the book was written by a stranger years ago, but it felt like it was meant specifically for Ethan. Part 2. The Promise. The note read, "If you're reading this, don't give up. Someone told me I'd never become a doctor. Today, I graduated from medical school." Ethan read it over and over. That night, sitting alone in a bus station, he made a promise. No matter what happened, he would fight for his dream. Weeks turned into months. Every day, Ethan visited the library. Every day, Sarah helped him learn. Soon, she realized something. Ethan was brilliant. One afternoon, she sat beside him. "Ethan, why aren't you in school?" For the first time, he told someone the truth about losing his parents, about sleeping on the streets, about feeling invisible. Sarah listened silently. Then she said, "We're going to change this." A few weeks later, Sarah connected Ethan with a youth support organization. He received housing, food, and a chance to return to school. His first day back was terrible. Students mocked his old clothes. Some laughed when they learned he wanted to become a doctor. One boy sneered, "Doctors don't come from shelters." The words hurt. But that night, Ethan studied until sunrise, and then he studied again the next night. Months later, the same students sat in shock as Ethan received the highest grade in the school. Just when life seemed to be improving, a letter arrived that would either change Ethan's future forever or break his heart. The letter. The envelope looked ordinary. But the moment Ethan saw the logo in the corner, his heart began pounding. It was from one of the most prestigious scholarship programs in the state. His hands trembled as he opened it. Then he read the words, "Congratulations, you have been selected as a finalist." For a few seconds, Ethan simply stared at the page. A finalist. Out of thousands of students. He couldn't believe it. The first person he told was Sarah. He ran into the library, holding the letter. Sarah looked up from her desk. One glance at Ethan's face, and she knew something had happened. "What is it?" she asked. Ethan handed her the letter. As she read it, tears appeared in her eyes. "I knew it," she whispered. "Knew what?" "That you were capable of more than you believed." The scholarship interview was scheduled for the following month, and Ethan was terrified. The other finalists came from wealthy families. Some had private tutors. Others had doctors and professors as parents. Ethan had none of that. The night before the interview, he couldn't sleep. "What if they ask something I can't answer?" he asked Sarah. "What if I'm not good enough?" Sarah smiled. "Then answer honestly." "What if honesty isn't enough?" Sarah looked directly at him. "Ethan, people forget facts. They forget grades, but they never forget courage." The next morning, Ethan walked into the interview room. 5 panel members sat across from him. The questions started easily. Then one woman leaned forward. "Ethan, why do you want to become a doctor?" The room became silent. Ethan took a deep breath. Then he spoke from the heart. "When I was homeless, people walked past me every day." The panel listened carefully. "I learned what it feels like to be invisible." His voice shook slightly. "I don't want to become a doctor because of money. I want to become a doctor because sometimes people need more than medicine." The panel remained silent. Sometimes they need someone who sees them. One panel member quietly removed his glasses. Another lowered her head. When the interview ended, Ethan felt strangely peaceful. For the first time, he wasn't pretending to be somebody else. He had simply told the truth. 3 weeks later, his phone rang. Unknown number. His heart raced. "Hello?" The voice on the other end said only 6 words. "Congratulations, you won the scholarship." Ethan froze. Then tears filled his eyes. The impossible was becoming possible. But during the celebration, Ethan discovered something about Sarah that would change the way he saw her forever. Sarah wasn't helping Ethan because she felt sorry for him. She was helping him because she had once lived a story very similar to his. A few days before leaving for university, Ethan visited the library. He wanted to thank Sarah. "I can never repay what you've done for me," he said. Sarah smiled. "You don't owe me anything." An older librarian nearby overheard the conversation. Then she laughed softly. That's exactly what Sarah's teacher used to tell her. Ethan looked confused. "What teacher?" The room became quiet. Sarah slowly sat down. For a moment, she stared out the window. Then she said, "When I was 16, my family lost everything." Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" "We lost our home." His eyes widened. Sarah nodded. "For almost a year, we lived in shelters and slept in our car." Ethan stared in disbelief. "You were homeless?" "Almost." For the first time, everything made sense. The kindness, the understanding, the patience. Sarah knew exactly what it felt like to struggle. "There was a teacher who believed in me," she continued. "When everyone else saw a poor girl, she saw potential." Sarah smiled. "She changed my life." Then she looked at Ethan. "And now I'm simply passing that gift forward." A few weeks later, Ethan left for university. But college wasn't the dream he expected. The classes were brutal. The competition was fierce. For the first time in years, he began doubting himself again. One failed exam became 2. His confidence started falling apart. Then one rainy evening, his phone rang. It was the library. The voice on the other end sounded frightened. "Ethan." His stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "It's Sarah." A long pause followed. Then the words came. She collapsed at work. Hook. The woman who had saved Ethan's future was now fighting for her own life. Ethan rushed to the hospital the very next morning. His heart pounded as he walked through the doors. The woman who had saved his life was now lying in a hospital bed. When he entered the room, Sarah smiled weakly. "Look at you," she joked. "You look more worried than the doctors." Ethan tried to smile. It didn't work. The doctor later explained that Sarah had a serious heart condition. Treatment was possible, but recovery would be long. For weeks, Ethan divided his time between university classes and hospital visits. Whenever life became overwhelming, Sarah always said the same thing. "Finish what you started." And Ethan promised he would. Months passed. His grades improved. His confidence returned. Medical school. Then, just weeks before his most important mission, disaster struck. Sarah's condition suddenly worsened. Doctors scheduled an emergency procedure. The problem? The surgery was scheduled for the exact same day as Ethan's exam. The exam he had worked years for. The exam that could determine his future. That night, Ethan sat beside Sarah's hospital bed. "I can't leave," he said quietly. Sarah shook her head. "Yes, you can." "No." "Ethan, what if something happens while I'm gone?" Sarah smiled. "What if something wonderful happens because you went?" Tears filled Ethan's eyes. "I should stay." Sarah squeezed his hand. Then she repeated the same words she had spoken years ago inside the library. "Never decide your future based on your current situation." The room fell silent. Both of them remembered that rainy afternoon, the beginning of everything. The next morning, with a heavy heart, Ethan walked into the examination hall. For 3 hours, he gave everything he had. Then he ran straight to the hospital. Every step felt heavier than the last. His mind was racing. What if he was too late? What if he never got another chance to thank her? When he reached the hospital floor, he stopped. A doctor was walking toward him. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. Then the doctor smiled. The procedure was successful. Relief flooded through him. Another letter arrived, just like the scholarship letter years earlier. His hands trembled as he opened it. Then he saw the words. Got first position in medical exam. The dream was finally real. The homeless boy who once slept on bus station benches became a success doctor. On graduation day, Ethan stood on a stage wearing a white coat. The audience erupted in applause, but he searched for only one face. Sarah. She was sitting in the front row. Tears streamed down her cheeks. After the ceremony, Ethan walked directly to her. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Sarah whispered, "You did it." Ethan smiled. Then he shook his head. "No?" His voice broke. "We did it." Sarah cried openly. And so did Ethan, because both of them knew this moment had started years earlier with a single conversation inside a library. A few months later, Dr. Ethan Carter began working at a community clinic. One rainy evening, he noticed a teenage boy sitting alone in the waiting room. The boy looked cold, scared, lost, just like Ethan once had. Ethan walked over and sat beside him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Jason." Ethan smiled. "What do you enjoy learning about?" The boy looked surprised. After a long pause, he answered, "Science." Ethan's smile grew wider. For a moment, it felt like history repeating itself. Then he said the words that had changed his own life. The words Sarah had given him years ago. "Jason, never decide your future based on your current situation." The boy looked up. Hope appeared in his eyes. And in that moment, Ethan finally understood something. Sarah's gift had never really been books. It had never been money. It had never even been advice. It was belief. She believed in a broken boy when nobody else did. And because of that belief, an entire future had been rewritten. Now it was Ethan's turn to do the same for someone else. And that is how kindness changes the world. One person, one life, one act of belief at a time. Final message. You may never know what someone is going through. A few encouraging words, a small opportunity, a little kindness. These things seem small, but to someone who has lost hope, they can mean everything. Never underestimate the power of believing in another human being.